Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Leadership from the Heart with myself, Renee Funk, and my dear friend, Elizabeth Riley. We're coming to you early today, but we are coming to you with a jam-packed session. So very honored and unbelievably proud today to have the one, the only Brad Inman. Brad is the founder of Inman News. It is the leading authority for real estate news in the real estate industry. And one of the things we love most about Brad Inman is he originated the Inman Connect Las Vegas and Inman Connect New York, which is the who's who in real estate leadership coming together twice a year at a real estate conference. Brad, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm honored to be in your living room.
We love it. We love it. Well, speaking of living room, rumor has it, the first 6 weeks of COVID, you were alone in your house, alone in your living room. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Yes. This is the scoop. My wife, Yaz, the love of my life, had to go get her mother back to Morocco. Yaz is from Morocco. And so when she landed back in the U.S., we both made a health decision, which was to stay apart, not put her on another plane so that she could make sure we're all okay. And so I was alone for 6 weeks, and it was really unbelievably good. Unbelievable moments of reflection and remembering stories from my past that I would have never had the opportunity to recall if I wasn't in that situation. But I really wasn't alone, Renee and Elizabeth. One day I looked out the window a few weeks ago, and out there was a group of unicorns grazing in my front yard in the desert. And yes, I said unicorns. And my 4-year-old granddaughter, Quinny, had taught me that unicorns exist. As she says, Papa, you have to believe. And so she had already kind of prepared me for this. But I was quite surprised. And I learned a lot of things. You can't take a picture of a unicorn, so I can't screen share a picture. Okay. Unicorns talk. I bet you two didn't know that.
Did not.
A lot of other interesting things. And they're also immune from the virus. They're immune from all viruses. I mean, unicorns are special, right?
Right.
So I decided after a little bit of nerve-wracking few days watching them to actually go out and talk to the unicorns, and chatted them up every morning at the same time for about 3 weeks. And the day I went to pick up Yaz at LAX, they informed me they were leaving. And I was like sad. I mean, I get chills now thinking about it. I was really quite sad. And I said, why? And they said, well, we know Yaz is coming back today. I said, you got to meet her. You got to meet her. And they go, no, that's not how it works. And they said they had to move to the next house where someone was alone. Now, the reason I tell that, it's not believable to everybody, is the humanness that has come out through this experience. Like I mentioned, my reflection, remembering stories from childhood that just come to me randomly. People get crazy, right? People belly laugh, people cry, people get angry. We have fights, we get creative, we do things we never thought imaginable, like you all are now in the media business. Welcome. And it's pretty spectacular, our humanness. But here's a great story of humanness, and I'll wrap up this first question. I started noticing that out my front door, there was a bag for every few days. And in it was something that the person that left it knew I needed and wanted. Like, I love to cook leg of lamb. This person knew that. There was a leg of lamb. A few days later, there was a whole chicken. A few days later, there was warm ribs, if you can imagine. And did that come from Zillow.com, Realtor.com, Realogy headquarters, EXP headquarters, Remax headquarters? Did it come from Zoom.com, Delivery.com, Walmart delivery? No, it came from Byron. Who's Byron? My local realtor. And that was a great act of service, not sales. No business card, no follow-up, no text. I just knew who it came from. And by the way, he's a great realtor with a high emotional IQ, high tech IQ, and a high market IQ, which is why I used him as a professional. I tend not to be best buddies with my realtors, but he also had this incredible human empathy, which part of emotional high IQ is having that empathy. So, you know, the beauty of all of this, and if there is beauty in such a tragic set of events when so many have died, it's that our essential humanness, like reflection and like believing in unicorns, and accepting that we get angry and have panic attacks and wake up at 3 a.m, accepting everything about us as human beings. It's so wonderful. I think it's just amazing. So that's my story about being solo.
I love it so much. And I love the unicorn. I mean, I have little ones too. And my 6-year-old is all about the unicorn. So it made me smile. But you're right. We've seen a lot of grace and faith over fear, if you will. And we've seen, like Renee and I talk a lot about, this is not just affecting one market. This is not affecting one group of people. This is in fact affecting the whole world. And to see how people are coming out and being more graceful and more empathetic and just being kinder is really heartwarming.
And it really is, you know, we were kind of over affected as a world, as society, as people, and affectation is just out the window. No one's impressed by your stuff or your any of that anymore. It's really cool. What else
Brad, one of the amazing things that you went into action right away with, that there is so much unbelievable leadership and value being poured into, is your Daily Dispatch podcast that you started around mid-March. And you have been lending a voice to key real estate leaders and influencers in the industry. You now have over 50 episodes in this Daily Dispatch podcast. What is one of your key takeaways from your Daily Dispatch?
Well, what I just said about affectation, you know, now it's not the time for leaders to be puffed up. They're not running around with a posse of handlers. They're in their kitchen or living room, just like the rest of us. This great equalizer. They're hopefully servants as leaders, which is the only way really to lead. They are much more compassionate, more empathetic. Doesn't mean they can't make decisive decisions. You know, as a business leader, you have to be decisive during difficult times. But, you know, I was interviewing Helen Hanna, who is a longtime leader in the industry, owns her own company, one of the unusual women running a big company, which is really fantastic. We need more of, and we've always advocated for it, Inman. But I asked her, did you ever have a time in your life where it was hard to get out of bed, hard to put one foot in front of the other, where you're really dragged down? Is there any strength or a moment in time where you can draw strength for now? And she paused, and she's tough, by the way. She's from Pittsburgh. She's from steel country. She's not some la-di-da-di. She is really an unbelievable leader. And she said, yes, when my son died and having children, I just couldn't imagine. And we both like paused, and we left the pause in the podcast. And she went on and said she never told anyone that publicly. So vulnerability is not a weakness. Vulnerability gives us strength. And to see these leaders be vulnerable, you know, Robert Refkin, the CEO of Compass, said to me that he was in a small farmhouse with his mother, his kids, and he brought in his best friend who was suffering from diabetes. And, you know, when you're on the Inman stage, you're at his Fifth Avenue office in a big corporate setting and all that posse of handlers, you don't get that. And so it's less about all the great stuff they said and more them acting like the rest of us. And I think in the long term, hopefully that's a takeaway from all of this, that this is a bottom-up industry. The fat cats at the top, I know them all. I talk to them all, and there's some incredible leaders. And we probably have the best tribe running the show now than ever. But it's really a bottom-up industry. And the more these guys come down to earth, and you know, they're talking every day to realtors, which is probably not something they normally do. And because of this technology that's put us all in everybody's living room, and they're in ours. So not to ramble on, but that to me, honestly, is the biggest takeaway. I mean, I can go on and on. They have all this insight into the market and this and that. And by the way, they're no more right than you two or any realtor who's from Omaha. You know, you in fact all know more about the market than all those experts put together, because you're talking to consumers every day in your local market. And that's where the truth comes from. It doesn't usually come from the top.
But Brad, I love that you got into action to create the Daily Dispatch podcast, because it is showing that equalizer among all the leaders, which whatever you want to dig into, if you want to dig into the analytical, you want to dig into what we believe is the foundation, right? And that's the way we lead with empathy and grace. It's giving everyone an ability to view their leadership And I see anxieties reducing as a result of having the connectivity with everyone.
Yeah,
So
you
you doing the daily dispatch, that's cascading something out that will be forever impacting those that sometimes are operating from fear.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'll just use myself. I started that because a buddy of mine, Dave Sharon, called me one day, and as you could tell, I was kind of anxiety stricken and not doing too well. And the reality is, I write every day and have since I was 12 years old. I got tapped to write a sports column for the local newspaper when I was only 12, and I love journalism, and I've been doing it every day. It's my yoga. It's every morning I wake up and write, but I couldn't write for about a month. I couldn't, I just couldn't do it. And it was very scary. And he knew I was a lifelong content creator. So David said, start a podcast. And I had started many before, but who would have thought? We have hundreds of thousands of viewers and listeners, and it was just the perfect time. So as much as anything, the podcast was about a little bit of saving Brad, and then it also, what I found is all these people are super accessible now. You don't have to go through some PR machine, and many of them want to do it on Saturday and Sunday. Who cares? It's all one big blur, right? And I don't even know what day it is. I think it's Monday, but so that it really helped me a lot. I just think there's so many takeaways from all of this that's going to benefit the real estate industry that makes me super, super excited.
So you have created an incredible community, an Inman community, not only just in real estate, but a number of people outside of the industry know you, follow what you're writing and what you're sharing. What shifts have you seen in the Inman community during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, one of the beautiful things, it reminds me of the blogging phenomenon about 15 years ago, is that realtors are natural content creators. And now there's new media being created. I'm a big fan of TikTok, only because I compare it to Saturday Night Live in the 70s. It was the longest recession in history in the 70s. We had great political divides in the 70s. We had just all these horrible things going on in the country. And Saturday Night Live popped on the scene and saved us kind of with humor, belly laughing. And to me, TikTok is the modern day kind of belly laugh that we can get. Now, you got to go through about 20 of them to find that one belly laugh. You got to go through some political and some kind of raunchy stuff, but kind of like Saturday Night Live. But what I noticed in the industry, like TikTok, there's some great content being created. Realtors don't sit passively down. They knew that creating content for their customers was really valuable. Zoom created this huge opportunity to create not only live, but enduring content that would be saved and distributed. People are more active on social. And so there's this wave of another generation of media, Web 2.0 media. It started with blogs and this social is a communication tool. It really wasn't media creation. So that's one thing I've seen the community do. And the beauty of that is they're creating really useful, valuable content for their customers. And, we're all sitting around. And I think we're all sick and tired of broadcast news. We're sick of divisive media. We're sick of politicalized media. And I do say, though, while all of this is fun and entertaining and interesting and peer-to-peer learning, it's also so important now that anything you digest or read, just try to find fact-based, either really solid journalism or, data, and really focus on things that really deliver to you the kind of insight that helps you make smarter decisions. I always say about a local realtor, the best realtors are the ones that have their zip code tattooed on their forehead or their butt or somewhere, because they need to know that market a lot better than I do. They need to know every block, every street, every house, who bought, when, sold, why. I mean, the schools and all that's really important, but I just focus on the actual housing that I'm buying to start with and know it like the back of your hand. And if you have that high market IQ, particularly in a market like this, Renee and Elizabeth, it is so invaluable because we're in a changing market. It's more nuanced. We don't know what's going on. And it's you all at the ground level, not the top level, not some big NAR study or big Zillow analysis, but at the ground level, knowing what's going on in the market will give me the confidence to, one, to do business with you, but also give me the confidence to make a good decision, whether I'm renting or buying or selling. And so what I've seen with our community is they're doubling down and being smart. I mean, some are learning languages and all that. Some are creating TikTok, but a lot of them are just studying. And it's a great time to go back to school. And I would really focus your studies and focus them around what's happening in your market, not just anecdotal. Call your MLS and tell them, I want to see every single piece of data you have. Call the experts, help them grind the data for you. Really understand the switcheroos going on in your own market. And then go from there. But media creation is a big thing happening with our community. And they've come together to help each other. The compassion, you know, that sense of alliance and feel good. And another thing that happened, they put on pause hating, and they put on, the trolls disappeared, and we all just got nicer in the world to one another. I mean, the first time I remember in a long time, bipartisan support for the CARE Act. I mean, political, you know, coming together. But, you know, I've been in journalism too long not, I've taken hits my whole life every day. And it's just part of, you know, if you try to tell the truth, and the truth is, you know, a big word. But if you work really hard to deliver the news and information every day, you're just going to get criticized. And in a free society, guess what? You can get criticized. It's okay. It's the First Amendment. In other countries, that doesn't happen. So I've never been that offended when I get called names and the haters come after me and the trolls. But I also kind of enjoying the vacation. It's kind of like we gave planet Earth a break, right? Thank God. It needed a break. And we as humans gave each other a break. I don't know about broadcast news and some of that, but I'll tell you, day to day in the world I live in and the media that I think is more credible, everyone lightened up a little. Now, I noticed last week I wrote something and they came back. And I actually thought that was a good sign. I thought that was a data point that we're returning to normalcy, that the haters came after Brad Inman again. So, and when I say these are people that just disagree. And when they disagree, they can't just disagree. They got to call me a name, or they got to say, you know, Zillow owns Inman, which is never, they don't know anything of Inman, or Inman, you know, Brad Inman owns Zillow stock. I've never owned any real estate stock. I don't do that. And because we're an unconflicted, independent news source, our reporters can't own stock in real estate companies. We don't sell the news whole. We just try to be old-fashioned, legitimate, independent, because the reason we are is that's what our readers expect. That's what they deserve. That's why they pay us for our subscriptions, our events. And they don't deserve to have tarnished truth, and they don't deserve to have conflicts of interest they don't know about. We just try to do our job. Yeah.
Well, you do the job.
Oh, thank you. The Inman community created itself, by the way, I would say. I think, and our teams at Inman that run Inman, that community is like an organism, you know, that it operates to its own, you know, light and weather and temperature, and it's really quite beautiful.
You said something that was pretty key for me. You said they're being more creative, and people are creating content, and real estate agents are content creating. There is a leader that we've actually interviewed that I respect. She is involved with Platinum Top 50 here in Austin, and she works with really the top agents. And that is one thing, a year or so ago, she would always talk about create before consuming, right? And I think we were all in our day-to-day hamster wheel, and everybody was just going, and you're consuming because you're having to do all these different things. And now time has slowed down. And so now we have that flexibility and that opportunity to create. So what you just said was key, being able to be more creative and taking that time to really think about what you're trying to do and being intentional in that.
Yeah, and it also forces you to pause and reflect when you put words to paper or your face on a video. And 80% of what I've written over the years, no one's ever read. I have one reader, and he's very critical, and that's me. And that alone, writing is just a way, or whatever kind of content creation is a way to stay kind of grounded. Taking time to reflect. It's kind of meditative if you think about it. You're stopping, as you say, consuming. Yeah. You're deciding to interpret and speak to what you've learned, and you find out a lot about yourself when you put it there, particularly when you read it the next day, or if you foolishly wrote it the night before when you're a little tipsy, you know, then you realize, God, I'm not stupid acting when I'm, you know. But writing and content creation is a great exercise. I really believe that.
Brad, you've been leading the way in so many different ways, whether it's your numerous ventures in innovation and technology. You're obviously the authority in real estate news. You collaborate and you share conversations with the best of the best. What important lessons would you share with the real estate leaders of tomorrow?
Use this incredible connection you have with your customers and your team, and use it to, as I always say, reach higher and dig deep to accomplish more meaningful things in your lives and the lives of the people that depend on you. We are up against some fierce challenges, and I say that because I have to be honest about where we're headed. Whether this is the Corona 2020 dog day summer, I don't know. But there's a really sobering article today in the Wall Street Journal about the swish recovery, not the V. It's a great article. Just take the time to read it. It's a little difficult to read, only because you can be optimistic and still be realistic. And a lot of people think optimism should sugarcoat the truth, and I just don't buy that. I think the best way to be optimistic, or the best path to self-awareness, is to be informed. So the swish recovery is something that we probably should be prepared for. Everything's not going to get back to normal quickly. And so we have to face that. One of my lessons of life is to get up every morning and face it. No matter what, face it. Don't hide from it. Don't run for it. But it also doesn't mean you have to be down or be a Debbie Downer. I had an experience in 2011 at the end of the year where my parents, who had been married 62 years and I loved to death, died back to back. Oh, wow. And I had 3 businesses that were all, like everybody, faced huge challenges. And I was holed up in the Upper East Side of New York in a little apartment, and I'd also broken off a relationship that wasn't working. And I would sit in that studio in the kitchen in a little chair at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, smoking a cigarette and drinking bourbon, and getting on the phone and going, poor me, poor me. And my children and my family were supportive, but I dealt with that situation with a little bit of anger, and it was obviously a little bit of depression. And Connect then rolled around in New York 2 weeks later, and I really wasn't feeling up for it. And I had a presentation the day before the big stage with 50 people, and Chris Smith was an executive at Inman, and he was our MC. And I gave a really gloomy, doomy speech. And he took me back in the back room after that, and he put one hand on one shoulder and the other on the other, and he looked me right in the eye. And I really loved that guy. And he said, Brad, get a grip. These people are depending on you. Fake it till you make it. Like when you go out there tomorrow, I know you can't not tell the truth about what you think is happening, but you can't put on that gloomy, doomy face. So I never forgot that. I had someone else once say to me, Susie Hale, back in the day, I was running through the conference center, picking up lint on the carpet, and had a big frowny face and not, being there for the people. But she came up to me, she said, Brad, you got to smile. Just do a fake smile, because if you're not smiling, everyone here thinks something's wrong. They think there's going to be an earthquake or something. They're depending on you. Yeah. And those 2 lessons made me realize that, face it. Don't lie to yourself about what's going on around you. But you don't have to do it being all gloomy and, doomy. You can do it with, a face of confidence, compassion, and a smile, and that'll get you a long way. So did I answer your question?
You sure did. You sure did. I love that. And I have to say that I see, for the realtors watching, there's a great number of Inman community Facebook groups, and there's so much great authentic collaboration going on there. But I also see when you come in and you post in those groups and you kind of drop those wisdom nuggets, you can see you processing through it, which that in and of itself is really great advice and guidance for those who are seeking, well, how do I lead today? Because sometimes leading isn't that much fun. And quite frankly, it's okay to say sometimes it's scary.
You got it. And I'll tell you, Renee, what I do in those groups is I learn so much from you all. And what I love, I remember early on, I put is real estate an essential service? And we had 500 posts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a guy going, a few of the haters came out, but not really. But one guy said, you asked the question the wrong way. And I thought, you needed to. And I went, no, I just asked my community if it was an essential service. I didn't put a big prepositional phrase. I didn't put a bunch of adjectives. I don't know what you think, but I'm just curious how you're feeling. That's not how I behave. I know my community's ready for this straightforward question.
Right.
But that brought up something that I learned. You mentioned podcast learnings. John Payton, who really is an amazing guy. He reminds me a lot of Glenn. Really a thoughtful guy. And he had gotten the coronavirus, as did his wife, from their college-age son who came back from spring break. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the early days of this, where he spent a lot of time broadcasting out their message to the members. Mm-hmm. He said it then came to him that he needed to listen. And so now when he goes out, he doesn't do any of the talking, and that's for me with the Facebook and other settings. And usually, I'm interviewing someone else. I'm the one listening. Here I've been talking, which, I'm happy to do, and I blather on. But this listening and what I get from the Facebook communities and the other Inman communities is just overwhelming. Well, at first, how often I'm wrong, or little things and nuances I learn, again, from the ground up, from realtors all over the country. The beauty of growing around all these settings is how different it is. Yeah. Like, I went to Portland and they're all like overly serious, and then I go to a part of near South Central LA and they're doing these crazy dances and yelling and screaming. And then I go to the beach, and then I go to Memphis and Chicago. It's what a beautiful community. Like, I get so much strength from the Inman community. It's just so powerful.
There's a lot of really good connection going on. There always has been, but I've seen a shift, and I've seen more of an authentic shift where it's truly reaching a hand out and helping one another, which that's what it's all about. Because once we come together in that way, the more we do it, the consumer opinion changes of us and continues to evolve.
Well, Renee, we put you on the virtual screen at Inman Town Hall, and I just got to tell you, your authenticity, which I always say, people go, I hate self-help books. I know I should probably read them, but I was an ebook publisher, and our number one seller was self-help books. And I felt kind of bad people buying these books. Some of them so empty, But I never forget, someone said, a book we're going to publish is How to Be Authentic. And I went, that isn't even, we are authentic. Like, if I sat here and burped, that would be authentic, or if I had to let us sing it, that'd be authentic. Authentic isn't an act. It's not something you practice. It's just being who you are, not trying, just however you are. Like, when I'm done here, how I walk out and greet my wife, that's the authentic Brad, whether I'm happy or smiling or whatever. But there's characteristic of authenticity. And the contrast is they should have a book. Don't be over affected. Don't be a faker. Don't be a bullshitter. Don't be a corporate speaking person. No one believes that. They just want you. And you came on our virtual stage, and I say there's people on the big stage that are fantastic. Some people that are good on the small screen and the big stage. But you were right away. We all said, wow, the community loved you. And there was, I use the word, but authenticity, like you were real. There was no fiber of fake in there. So
there's no ego.
No ego. There it is.
Thank you, friends. Thank you.
That's simple. You're right, Elizabeth.
Brad, I'm biased, but I agree with you 100%. I mean,
we became a fan. I mean, and the Inman community after, who is she? Where's she? We want to hear her. Tell her, come back. And the unfortunate thing for you, Nate, once we got our hooks into you, you're going to be everywhere. You're just looking.
Well, that's a pretty interesting segue. We've been talking on the show, Leadership from the Heart series, a lot about agility, right? I mean, if there's ever a time, at least in our lifetime that I'm aware of, agility as our core focus every morning has been just a demand of the day, because, well, for a while there, the first beginning in the couple weeks, every hour it felt like things changed. Yeah. So I have to say, one of the finest tools that I've seen at agility is the way Inman came together and pivoted and said, okay, we're doing Inman Connect Now as a fully virtual conference coming up in June. Can you talk about Inman Connect Now?
Sure. It's just, agility, I always said, is about having high expectations versus low expectations, feeling like enough confidence in yourself that you're willing to change and you're willing to make a mistake. And if you approach agility, is not just being smooth, and it's just like, wow, we can do this. And then taking the steps and executing really well. Behind the scenes at Inman is a group of people that execute really, really exceptionally well. And it's a high bar at Inman. It always has been. Like, if you decide to be a good journalist, you got to really work at it. You can't be lazy. You can't just publish. You got to get the facts right. You got to make sure. And as we produce physical events, high production values, good speakers, and we just realized, hey, we can do this virtually. We have no clue if it will be successful. Right. We want to apologize for trying. We'll apologize for mistakes, but that's part of being agile. If you think about it, agile is like, can I move quick and can I do this? Can I go down this road, because I want to explore a different path and not be afraid that I'll get lost and not be afraid what I might see. It's so easy. Like, I notice when I bike in the morning, I just start to go down the same path. It's like, why am I doing this? Or Yaz will say, let's turn right. When we lived in West Hollywood, she used to love to go into the gnarly neighborhoods of Hollywood. I like to go to Beverly Hills because the bike paths were better. But the point is just go south and north, don't go east and west. And that's what agility is about, not being afraid to change. So I think we'll get this right. But the way we'll get it right is having people like you on stage. You're playing a big role because your dress rehearsal is so fine. And now we're going to try it out. And in some ways, I think we're all learning that digital's better in a number of ways. We can access more people in more four corners of the world. And in other ways, you can hug and high five. But I think they're here to stay because I think physical events are, they're still uncertain. And so it's going to be packed with great speakers. I mean, all the big CEOs of the world are going to be in your living room. We're bringing them to your home. So you can chat with them. You're going to get a house tour of, Rich Barton's house. We're going to make it a lot of fun, but really very high production and not just a bunch of Zoom faces, but, be some of that because that works really well too. So, we're going to give it our best shot. We're all in. Inman's been lucky. We haven't laid off people. And so we pointed them in the right direction and said, hey, here's something we can all bite off and, stay employed and get it done. And they really stepped up, and the community is real supportive, and signups are, just we're getting many more people than we would get live. So, and you can come for $50. And in the old days, you pay $800 to go to a live event. You have to travel. You have to, get that corner room next to the elevator and wait for your room to be ready at 3:30, and wait for the Uber that's not late. Stand out in the cold, go to dinner, and now you don't have to do any of that. And it's $50 instead of $1,500 or $2,000 after you add up all the costs. So that makes my heart feel good because I can bring Connect to a lot of people that could never afford to come.
Well, you're talking about connecting and consumers. Our consumers are appreciating how we're pivoting, right? And how we're changing things to make things so much easier for them. Well, in the same breath, we as consumers, right? What you're just describing is exactly what we're needing as well. So we're getting to still have all the content, still have all the interaction. You're talking about Inman Connect going live. Well, our shareholders event, same thing, is this week, which I love to travel. I love the face-to-face, but I have to tell you, I'm super excited for the reasons you just explained, right? There's going to be a lot of things we'll be able to see, but so many more people have access now where they didn't before, right? And a lot of people can't travel or financially can't do it, or they have families. And I mean, we all are faced with that, but now you are being able to speak to the masses much more than you were be able to before. We're able to provide for our consumers and our clients in a much bigger way. And so I agree. I think it's here to stay in a different way. And I'm excited about watching and seeing and learning in this way and not having to have that added stress or anxiety or anything else because we're all in the same position.
Absolutely. and the interaction that we can do digitally. You know, everybody, I should explain, I took Zoom airline flight 1233 to Orlando last night, and it was a great flight. And I'm getting on Zoom flight, I guess, 42, and I'm headed to Atlanta, which is pretty close by. Get this, you all. The market cap of Zoom is greater than all the large airlines combined. This idea of Zoom Airlines taking us to people's homes and creating this connection, it's not like comparing it to the physical connection. It's a new experience.
Yeah.
It's an entirely new experience. You know, in the old days, you'd sit in a conference room. Like, I've had a lot of companies and bought and sold in big conference rooms, and, you know, the bankers would be there and the lawyers would be there. And then one guy would be on Zoom, you know, and we'd all like, and then you'd get through 30 minutes of the meeting and say, oh, what about John? John, do you have an opinion? You know, you think now where we all are here, it's again this great equalizer. It's really quite beautiful. And it doesn't mean, you know, none of the old stuff's going to hang on. It always does. But there's a whole new way of looking at the world that's pretty damn exciting, I think.
Well, adoption out of necessity can and should yield us some really interesting efficiencies in the industry. Like, for example, our team has spent a lot of time over the last 30, 45 days talking about, okay, great, we have our customers adopting these technologies. How can we then parlay those same technologies into improving our customer service in continued fashion to stay, right? Yeah. So that we will hopefully then take what may have been 20 showings and maybe we reduce that to 5 showings, belly to belly, right? Because we can do buyer discoveries in advance.
Yeah, it's amazing what's going to happen to the transaction. I had Pete Flint, the founder of Trulia, on. He's a good friend, and he first came to Connect. Get this. He called me as a student at Stanford and said, I can't afford to pay for Connect. Can I be a volunteer? And so he checked badges at the front door. This is an entrepreneur that sold his company for $3.5 billion. And he was inspired by coming to Connect that there was an opportunity there. But as he said, the beauty right now is all the venture money, all the innovation, all the smart young people are focused on the back end, not the front end. So all these gnarly habits, I call mortgage the Freddy Krueger of real estate. You know, we're finally going to, you know, kill Freddy Krueger and fix these things that are broken so the consumer has a better experience. And the realtor too. This is good for everybody. And I can turn to my realtor for that high emotional IQ to help me through this gnarly transaction. I can depend on this realtor to tell me more about the market than anyone on planet Earth and any portal will ever understand. And they now have the tech IQ with all the tools to make my life easier. Because what I think realtors are learning, consumers have been ready for this for a long time. It just took the industry to adopt. But it's also the time to throw away all this tech we bought when we were too busy to think about it and get rid of it. There's a lot of tech we have that is useless that we couldn't curate. Now, I'll give you an example real quick. The other day, I turned on my Roomba for the first time, and it was yelling and screaming and talking to me and rumbling through the house. And I was having kind of a half-assed day. And you know what I did with the Roomba? I took it and threw it in the pool. And then I grabbed my broom and I swept the house. And there's an example where the broom, that technology, how long has that been around? 400 years? It still works pretty well. We should keep the broom. But you know, we shouldn't keep a 400-year-old tradition. We shouldn't keep a notary wet signature. Stupid. I can get authenticated at the airport with my eyes and my fingerprint, and Homeland Security is going to let me in. But somehow when I go through a mortgage or something else, they treat me like I have a gun going through Homeland Security with a wet signature. I fought with the bank recently, wanted to send in a notary, and I said, are you kidding me? This big bank that I've been doing business for 30 years, you're going to risk my life by sending a notary to my house? And they finally went, oh, I guess we shouldn't. I go, no, you shouldn't for me now. You shouldn't do it for anybody else. And you should never do it in the future. We authenticate digitally now. We don't need a notary and a wet signature. I get
so true
preachy about some of this tech because, come on, gang, let's move on. Let's focus on the right stuff.
Well, that's a great segue because I have a great question for that. I mean, there's so many evolutions. You're just talking about a few right now. So what do you think, in your opinion, what's the next tectonic shift in the real estate market or industry?
Yeah, total automation. With the realtor still center stage, you know, and already for 10 years, the realtor hasn't necessarily been the captain of the ship. You know, there's a little big worry. The realtor's got to be at the center of the transaction. That was kind of an ideological principle. So what does that mean? Wouldn't it be good if just you couldn't get on the boat without the help of a realtor, right? Think about it this way. Have you ever got on a boat without someone helping you get on and off a boat? It's real. I mean, maybe already you figured it out, but most of us need some help getting on and off the boat. Yeah. Even when you go on a cruise, they help you get on the boat, right?
Right.
So wouldn't it be the realtor was that facilitator of getting us on and off the boat to home ownership, on and off the boat to new housing. And so I think what we're seeing now is all of that other stuff that was the agent playing the role, the bureaucrat, the secretary, the administrative, is a really demeaning role. What we really hire a realtor for is the three things I keep talking about. I want someone empathetic and understanding of my motivations, who's listening to me to make the toughest decision of my life. I want someone that gives me all the tech tools to make this as easy as pie. I used to call it the latte vision. You should be able to buy a house as simply as it is to buy a latte. And people laughed at me, but my point was, there's a lot of stuff here we can get rid of. And third, I want that market intel, and let the realtor focus on that, not pushing paper for Brad Inman. What a waste of time. And that's the Tectonic automation of the transaction by the real estate industry themselves adopting it. Second, to their consumers being more than willing to adopt it, more than willing to go to virtual home tours, more than willing to get rid. You think the consumer wants to do a wet signature and isn't willing to do documents? Are you kidding me? The consumer's way ahead of the industry, and now the industry's catching up. And I think we're just going to have a much easier. And you know what happens when this goes on? There are more transactions.
Yeah,
because it's easier. Right. And there's more details. In the end, that's the big picture.
Your distinction is so important because oftentimes if someone says automation, there is an element of fear that will kick in, especially from the realtor community. You're spot on what you're sharing, and I look forward to that same day. Brad,
think back to my story, Byron bringing the bag, right?
Yep.
The realtor's never been more important. They're the most, if you think about the one thing this is all of it hyper local, right? It's so hyper local, we're stuck in our house.
Right.
And we're just spreading our wings. Like I jumped in the pool, just jumped in this morning. And I heard Dave, my neighbor, who happens to be a realtor in San Diego. And we talked over the thing, you know?
Sure.
As far as my world goes. And in that world is the realtor if that person's behaving like a servant, not a salesy person. And so this has reinforced the role of that empathetic professional that we need. Housing's never become more important, and the facilitator of those people getting us on and off the boat to homeownership has never been more valuable.
Such an important lesson. Brad, in 3 words or less, what does the Inman community mean to you?
The love of my life is Yaz, but my people are Inman. I mean, it keeps me alive.
Yeah.
Keeps me alive. Yeah, that's it right there.
That's awesome.
We can absolutely relate because, I mean, it's the same thing for us. It's our EXP family that we've created or that we know and the people we're surrounded by. It's a blessing, and you don't really need anything outside of that when you're surrounded by your tribe, when you're surrounded by good people that mean well, that do well, that want well for you.
Well, I think, you know, my dad used to say, we used to think he was wrong, but he used to talk about friends and family. He goes, after family, and there's a few members of the family you'd like to get rid of, but he would always jokingly say, but there's about 5 people, you know? And I think similar, there's a couple communities that we feel super connected to. And I think all of this, think about it, it's really reinforced what's important to us. And some of this other stuff, why would I go there? Why would I waste my time reading that? We used to try to gobble it all up and be everywhere, but now it's kind of like, wow. And now more than ever, you need to be focused in business, as an example. You need to be really focused. And by the way, I am such a fan of Glenn. Glenn kept coming back to Connect for many, many years with a new idea, new software. And he was always humble, you know, total servant as a leader. And I couldn't have been happier when he hit it out of the park with EXP. Like all of his work and all of his inventions, they all came together in one place. And he's one of those people, like, you know, like I guess my dad, I think it's more than 5, but when I see Glenn, I feel good. I feel good about the world. Yeah. I feel better. when he walks into a room, or when I hear his voice, you know, on the phone, or when I did the podcast. Like, I feel better. Glenn's here.
He has that effect for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny because I was, you know, Renee and I both been in the business 15 years, and I was with another company for 10. I'm extremely loyal. I was super happy. I had no reason to leave. And then I met Glenn, and he was one of the most humble, gracious, real people, and smart, right? And so I'm always talking about people join people. And I was just attracted to that. I was like, wow, I love what his vision is. He had 400 people in his whole company at that time. So, but you know, you get to know people, and you see people for who they are and what their intentions are and their goal to really, truly change people's lives. And in the real estate industry, and I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to be around that person. I want to learn from him. So yeah, exactly what you're saying. We could not agree more.
That's great.
Brad, we're going to put you on the hot seat now. Are you ready?
I am. We're kind of running out of time, aren't we?
We are. It's the last one.
My Zoom flight is.
Your Zoom flight's boarding. Okay, this is a quick one.
Your last question.
No problem.
What does leading from the heart mean to you?
Well, I think life is about this constant journey of being self-aware and, you know, forgiving yourself, probably first and foremost when you make mistakes. And then once you do that, you can just be a better leader, you know. So start by whatever you've done or whatever stupid things I said on this, but, you know, don't sit around and ponder it, forgiving yourself, but just, if you get into that mode, that path of self-awareness where you can consistently forgive yourself, then you're more likely to take a chance. You're more likely to take risks. You're more likely to get out of character. You're more likely to turn left or turn right than you would doing the same old thing. You're more likely to go north and south instead of east to west. And then the life just opens up. And when it opens up for you, it opens up for people around you. Was that three?
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Brad, thank you. It has been such a gift for us to get to spend these last 45 minutes with you.
Thank you, Brad, for pouring into the industry, for pouring into the agents. We appreciate you and look forward to seeing everyone at Inman Connect June 2nd through the 4th. Inman comes to our living rooms.
There you
Pretty
go.
epic. Thanks, Brad.
Thank you for everything you do.
You might see a unicorn.
Awesome.
That's right. I'm watching. Take care, Brad. Bye-bye.
Take care.